from far away just to find me hanging around. Met in the city, babe. Now you wanna live in the town and you wanna out. Babe, with so many kids, I'm a bit.
Welcome to the first episode of Just Hit Play. I'm your host, Peter. With me is my co-host, Nick.
Hey everyone, I am super excited to be here and recording this first episode. Thank you to everyone who's listening right now. I can't wait to get going and start sharing some of my favorite songs.
Yeah, me too. Okay, Nick, so let's talk about why we're doing this podcast.
Sure.
So I guess I came to you with this idea. So it dawned on me one day. I was going through my playlist and I was just sick of the music that I was listening to. I just kept skipping songs. And I realized I had listened to a lot of new music. I guess technology really siloed the music that I was listening to. I don't listen to the radio anymore. I don't watch like MTV for music videos like we used to in the old days. And I wasn't really being exposed to new music, which is something that new music was everything to when I was growing up. When I was around your age, you'd always want to hear a new band or a new song. And then then I thought, if I'm not listening to new music because the technology has sort of siloed me, then Nick, who's 20 something years younger than me, might not be hearing music of an older generation, which is a shame, I thought, because there's some really great music out there. So I contacted you and I thought, this would be a great way for us to connect because, one of the problems with us connecting is that even though you're my nephew, I live in Australia and You're in Canada. So I thought this would be
14-hour difference, is it?
12, I think right now, 12 or 13 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you were how old were you when we went to Arcade Fire?
I was 13, almost 14.
Yeah. So I was visiting Canada and I had tickets to see Arcade Fire, and it really warmed my heart when you were like, I love Arcade Fire.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah. So tell me about your thoughts from the concert.
Yeah, that concert was like an extremely important event for me, as far as developing my love for music. Because up until then, that was my first concert. And it made me realize that, listening to songs played off your phone is one thing, but actually experiencing it live, seeing it performed in front of you, it's an entirely different beast. And like that just really was a revelation to me. And I came to realize that, that music is meant to be experienced live and all this, but also it just like develops just a really strong passion within me for music and discovering, the new music, as you say. And also I've just spent way too much money seeing live music because of you. But I don't regret a penny of that. So we're all good.
I was really lucky in my 20s where there's a radio station in Toronto, a really famous radio station in Toronto called 102.1 The Edge. And I became friends with the DJ on that radio station. And I used to get a lot of free tickets to concerts.
I wish that would have saved me a lot of money.
Yeah, I think I probably got 30 or 40 free tickets off her over the years. So I was pretty lucky. So we started to exchange music. Every week I would give you a song to listen to and you'd give me a song to listen to. And then I thought maybe there's other people that are in our boat where, they might not know new music or they might not be exposed to certain songs from, 60s, 70s, or 80s. And then I thought, let's do a podcast, and you were on board.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I've always wanted to do a podcast. I just thought it'd be really cool, and what better way to do it than to be talking about something that I'm so passionate about. So yeah, I mean, as soon as you approached me with this idea, I was all aboard.
And of course, we couldn't be doing this podcast if it wasn't for my good friend Darren. Darren and I run a photography business together. And he is not only is he an amazing friend to me, but he's a tech genius. So he's working away at our Brisbane studio. So he's the engineer and producer of this podcast. So Darren, we couldn't be doing this without you. You're the best, man.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. And I just want to add, I have a special request from my dad. He was asking if it was possible to get a podcast, but without my uncle's voice at all. Like he just wants to hear me. So maybe you can figure that out, Darren.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Okay, so Nick, what's the first song that you wanted me to listen to?
Yeah, so I chose to start off my portion of this podcast with one of my all-time favorite songs, which is Nights by the visionary artist Frank Ocean. And I'll just give some background and context for anyone who may be unfamiliar with Frank Ocean. He kind of exploded onto the music scene in 2012 with his debut album, Channel Orange. And before he released this album, he was ghostwriting for Justin Bieber, Beyonce, John Legend, major pop stars. He was also, part of the hip hop collective Odd Future, who also made some fantastic music. Um, yeah, so he released this album in 2012 and went radio silent for 4 years. And then finally, 2016, released a follow up album, Blonde, which completely lit the internet on fire. Maybe not the circles of the internet you are on, but certainly mine. And this
Yeah,
album,
I've heard obviously of Frank Ocean, but I don't think I'd actually listened to a song until today, till this morning, really.
when he released this album, Blonde, it was really like it struck me right away, and it ever since I've heard it, it's been one of my favorite albums of all time, and I'm really excited to be able to share this with you. You've never heard the song before, and I know I'm excited for you, to be honest. So basically, the song Nights, if anyone hasn't heard it, please pause this right now and go listen. But it marks the halfway point of the album, and in my opinion, it's just an epic song and has one of the wildest beat switches I've ever heard. I can vividly remember lying in bed listening to the album for the first time, and I was just like, wow, this is some beautifully produced music. And the beat switch, and we'll go more in depth later, but it represents a complete tonal shift, not just in the song, but in the album. And, it's important to keep in mind the lyrics may be fairly abstract, but Frank Ocean's reflecting on his previous relationships, the formative times in his life, talks about, just being displaced by Hurricane Katrina, establishing himself in the music industry. And really, it's just a fantastic song. Just, yeah, let's talk about it. I'm ready.
So let's play a few seconds of it. So for rights reason, we can't play the full song. But Darren, did you want to put on about 15 seconds? That'd be great.
Round your city, round the clock. Everybody needs you. No, you can't make everybody equal. Although you got buku family, you don't even got nobody.
All right. So, firstly, what did you think of the song? Like, what were your initial reactions after you finished it?
I listened to that song quite a bit today. Actually, I probably spun it about probably 4 or 5 times.
Nice.
I got the feeling that it would have had a bigger impact on me if I had listened to the album. I think I think it's as a one-off. I felt a little bit wanting. Like it seems like and I think you described it perfectly. It seems like a break in an album. I would have loved to have listened to the songs prior to it to see what the feeling of that album was. It felt like a breath, like someone's taken a breath from an album, like in the midst of an album, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And honestly, like I highly recommend whenever you get the chance to spin the whole album through. Because right. Just the way he sequences the songs and where Nights is in the track list, like it's very, he did everything on purpose, and there's a lot of meaning behind it. So yeah, it's a great observation, and you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought the beat change was dramatic. I thought it was a different song. Like I went in and I picked up my phone because I still like buying music on iTunes, so I bought the song on iTunes. So I literally thought that I was listening to a different song. But yeah, the break was fantastic. To me, that song I would listen to driving. It's a really good windows down, driving at night, and just driving in, that's what that song, that's what I think I would listen to that song.
No, I've had that playing many a times driving at night. You hit the nail on the head there. And what did you think of the lyrics specifically? Like, were you able to kind of pay attention to those and what he was saying?
Yeah, so I watched 2 different YouTube clips of the song as well. One actually had the lyrics appearing, and again, you're right. The lyrics are really abstract. I didn't know anything about his past relationships, Hurricane Katrina. I didn't get that from the song, but you're right. It's just an abstract painting, really, of what I guess the writer was going through.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight one line in particular when he says, "Want to see Nirvana but don't want to die." Like that's always been so poignant to me, and I've come back to that line a lot of times before, and it just hits so hard. But like you said, very abstract.
Speaking of someone who grew up in the grunge era, I never got to see Nirvana, so I'm quite upset by that too. The son of a bitch died before I could see him. So
yeah, very unfortunate. Rest in peace, Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, I really like the song. I will say one thing though. I think he should give half that money to Kanye West that he's made off that song. I think that was really? I would say he should really pay a lot of money to Kanye West.
Interesting. What aspects of that reminded you of Kanye?
If Kanye West had never existed, I think this would be a different song.
You know what? I can see it, and Frank has worked a lot with Kanye. They have a few songs together, and Kanye was really pivotal in helping break Frank Ocean to the mainstream. He put him on a song with him and Jay-Z in 2013. So yeah, I see where you're coming from, definitely.
Right away, I could pick up on the Kanye West influence, and specifically the change in beat. I think that, not that I know a lot of Kanye West songs. I know a little bit of Kanye.
We'll change that during this podcast. You'll become familiar with Kanye.
Yes, I'm sure we will. I forgot to mention at the beginning, the one person that I don't want to listen to is Drake. I don't get it. I've listened to Drake songs.
I don't understand why piss off a lot of listeners.
I don't understand why people like him. When I left Canada, he was a kid in a wheelchair.
Oh no!
And
we just lost all our listeners. That's it. They're gone.
And all of a sudden, I don't get it. He's really famous. Yeah, I guess. Whenever I watch a Raptors game, I cringe when they cut to Drake. It's anyway. Enough of that. So
yeah, it does a lot of clapping.
Yeah, there's a lot of mugging and clapping of his face, and it bothers me. But leaving Drake aside forever, I really dug the song. I thought it was a great driving song. Yeah, that's definitely a song that I could listen to driving at nights, or even lying in bed with headphones on. I think you're right. I should probably listen to the album and see what preceded it. I think that would lend better understanding of the song for me.
I highly recommend it. And can I ask, this song, does it remind you of any songs that you listened to or have heard before, or was this, a more unique experience?
Yeah, I would say it definitely made me think of Kanye West. No, I thought it was a very, the production was really good of the song. I can't complain. It's sonically, it was really good. Yeah, I guess that was the first thing that jumped out to me was Kanye.
Yeah, and I totally see that. For me, I see a lot of similarities in not necessarily the production, but in the song structure to Day in the Life by the Beatles, where there's the two distinct halves. I see that as a major influence for the creation of the song. And actually, Frank referenced the Beatles as a huge influence for when he was creating the entire album as a whole. So
right, okay.
If you like the Beatles, I'm sure you might like Blonde for some of the same reasons.
Well, I do love the Beatles, so and that is one of my favorite songs. So I'll definitely give the album a listen to. So yeah, thanks for bringing that into my playlist, Nicholas.
No problem. And if any listeners are hearing that for the first time, I hope that will also be in your playlist from now on.
Yeah, so we're going to create a Spotify account. So that way, if you do want to listen to the songs in full, you can definitely click on our Spotify account. Have you created one as of yet, Nick?
I have. So if you go on Spotify and you search for the Just Hit playlist, you'll be able to find the playlist that I've curated with all the songs that we'll be reacting to each podcast episode, all in one place for your convenience.
Great. And we also have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, but we'll give you all those deets, as the kids like to say, later on in the podcast.
All right. And
let's move on to the song that I picked for you. T-Rex. T-Rex are a tragic band, really. Popular in the 70s, led by the singer Mark Bolan. So the 70s, as the glam rock era sort of started in the 70s, you had T-Rex, you had David Bowie, obviously. So you had all these bands that had a very specific sound. And I think, when we talked about the song earlier, you did mention David Bowie, and absolutely David Bowie is a huge influence. T-Rex were an influence on Bowie. So it was definitely around that era. T-Rex only lasted a few years, unfortunately, because Mark Bolan died in a car accident in 1977.
Oh, that is
tragically.
tragic.
He was, So the music that we have from T-Rex was short, but you'll be hearing more T-Rex in this podcast because I'm a huge T-Rex fan. I could have. This definitely wasn't one of their hits, but one of my favorite T Rex songs. There'll be a lot more T Rex coming for you to listen to, Nick.
Great.
I really love just, I don't know. There's a sadness to the song. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that he died at the age of 29 or whatever, but I think that there's just a sadness to the song that isn't a typical T Rex song. T Rex is more of a, they're glam rock. They're more of a party song or a party band. And
Okay.
but this song just sounds completely different than a normal T Rex song. So Darren, why don't you hit 15 seconds?
Dance myself into the tune. I dance myself into the tune. Is it strange to dance so soon? I dance myself.
All right, Nicholas, what did you think?
Firstly, I just want to get it out of the way. I loved that song. I really, truly did. Like, as you've already said, I connected it to David Bowie right away. And that's, obviously a huge compliment. Another legend, rest in peace. But yeah, I'm a huge David Bowie fan, and this immediately connected those dots for me. I could see the influence. And what I really connected with in this song was, aside from the instrumentation, which I'll talk about as well, but the vocals and just the singer's voice have such a haunting quality to them. And what I loved is it makes this sad undertone to the whole song. And like the lyrics are about dancing, which, generally happy activity, but it's just such a haunting vocal performance. And I think it's a fantastic juxtaposition. And I really enjoyed that. And then, you've got the guitar is fantastic, obviously very glam rock, typical of that genre. Yeah, I really thought it was a great song.
What was really interesting at the time, that's when sort of keys were really being introduced into music, because keyboards were being produced at a cheaper scale. Before that, if you wanted keys in your song, if you think back to the 60s and the Beatles, it was really expensive to get keys into a pop song.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Brian Eno, I don't know if you know who Brian Eno is, but he's a famous music producer who did a lot of David Bowie songs, fantastic Bowie albums. When he first got these keyboards, he just took them apart and tried to make them make unusual farting noises, which is quite funny. And so you sort of get a lot of
a true mastermind for that.
Yeah,
a genius.
And so that's where the glam rock has this sort of undertone of like, this keyboard influence, and David Bowie definitely would have had that at that time. So this is when keyboards started to get a little bit cheaper, and they could add those elements into the song.
What I also really liked about the song were I found the strings that they had in the background were just really, really beautiful. And the way they come in and swell and then leave throughout the track, I really liked that part. Really adds to the atmosphere of the whole song. The juxtaposition between happy lyrics and a sad sound. I think the strings really added beautifully to that.
Yeah, it's and I think you got it right. It's such a hauntingly beautiful song, and Mark Bolan unfortunately died way too young in a car accident at the age of 29.
That's really too bad. Do you know how many albums he was able to put out with T-Rex?
I could look up the discography, but see, because I came to T-Rex a little bit older, because I wasn't too young in 1977 to sort of appreciate them. I would have picked up probably their greatest hits when I was a teenager. So that's how I got to know them from their greatest hits. So no, I don't know the answer to that question. So if any listener knows how many albums T-Rex put out, please you can comment on our Facebook page or Instagram
please do.
page. Yeah, so I sort of came to T-Rex probably when I was my late teens, early 20s, when I started to really appreciate them. So yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. So I would have picked up their greatest hits.
How did you end up discovering them? I'm always curious when I think about back in when you were my age, like what was the process like for finding new bands, especially ones that may not have been getting radio play, like they were more obscure, not as mainstream? Like how do you get exposed to that type of music back then?
Yeah, and you're right. T-Rex would have got radio play for their bigger hits, which this definitely wasn't one of their bigger hits. So how I got exposed to music was I have two older brothers, one of them being your father, who doesn't like the sound of my voice apparently, but that's okay. So I got a lot of, so like, for instance, my favorite band is U2, which is one of your father's favorite bands. And so I would have been exposed to U2 early on from your dad. From your other uncle, Lou, I would have listened to like Supertramp, Black Sabbath, the Eagles, Led Zeppelin. So I was, because they're a little bit older than me, Lou is 10 years older than me, and Joe is 6 or 7 years older than me. So I would have been listening to their music. So when they were teenagers, I would have been 5 or 6 years old. So I would have been listening to teenager music. So I was exposed to bands that probably most kids wouldn't have been exposed to, which was which made my love of music even deeper. For that particular song, Cosmic Dancer, I was in a store. I was walking around Queen Street, downtown Toronto, in a clothing store, and there was a girl playing records. And obviously, I knew T-Rex, but I'd never heard that song, and that song was playing, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I was like, who is this? And she goes, it's T-Rex. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And that's how I sort of heard that song. But you're absolutely right. Your exposure to new music is completely different than how I would have been hearing music.
It is nowadays. It's so easy, really, to find what you're looking for. I mean, it's just a matter of typing into YouTube or Google, whatever genre you're looking for, or there's websites where you can put in, your favorite bands, and they'll spit out just a list of results of bands that sound similar or songs that sound similar to what you like. Spotify is always curating, Apple Music as well. They're curating these playlists for you automatically based on what you're already listening to expose you to new music.
And bands have a direct link to their fans now, because you could go on radiohead.com or youtube.com or whatever, and there's a direct link from band to listener. I'll tell you a funny story. In 1988, I was 13 years old, and I kept hearing rumors from reading Rolling Stone magazine about a new U2 album. And every week I would go to Sam the Record Man and talk to the guy behind the counter if there was a new album coming out from U2.
Wow.
So that's how I had to get information about when the release date of an album was.
That is so hard for me to imagine.
Yeah, if you can think, like, I literally had to go into Meadowville Town Center, and I walked up to the guy at Sam the Record Man, and I go, when's the new U2 album coming out? And he pulled out a book to see what new releases were coming out. And he goes, nope, not in the book. And that's how I had to, if I wanted to know what the release date was, it was either, the DJ on the radio would tell us, or I'd have to ask the guy at Sam the Record Man when the release date was.
Wow. And I feel like, again, in that time, the music taste of a lot of people would have really been driven by what was on the radio. I mean, obviously radio has, declined in how many people are listening to it with the advent of streaming and whatnot. So I feel like exploring your music taste is a lot more self-directed nowadays, whereas before, I feel like for the majority, it was kind of just dictated by whatever the radio was playing. Am I correct in that assumption?
You're absolutely 100% correct. I would, like the first time I ever heard the Violent Femmes was because they were being played on an AM radio station when I was waiting for my mother, who went to the drugstore, and one of their songs happened to come on the radio. And all of a sudden, I'm a huge, Violent Femmes fan. I don't know if you know who the Violent Femmes are, but we'll get to them if you don't know who they are.
Yeah, I don't know them.
Yeah, don't worry, Nick, you're going to hear some songs. Don't worry about that. So that's, it was radio, and it was much music. I had a subscription to Rolling Stone magazine where there'd be like a new band mentioned, and I would buy their record and I would never have heard them ever. So I'd go out.
That's a lot of faith in Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah, I'd go out, and they would say, who they sort of sounded like. And if I thought they looked cool as a 13 or 14-year-old, I would go out and
of course,
and buy the record, see if I liked it. And sometimes I liked the music. Sometimes it was the Pixies. Other times it wasn't the Pixies. And it's a band that I can't remember who they were. And I never listened to them again. So you got lucky or you didn't. There was no way to know.
And bands had the crazy hair back then, right?
Yeah, the 80s. Let's not talk about 80s fashion. It's
okay.
Noted. As Bono once said, no one should look like their hair has been ironed. So that's definitely...
Oh, that is it. Yeah, that's a tough look.
Yeah, so... yeah, I agree with that. No one should look like their hair has been ironed. That's the 80s.
Words to live by from Bono.
Words to live by for Bono. Yeah, I'm very glad you like that song. It's and I think what you'll find too is it does not sound really like T-Rex. T-Rex are glam rock. They're amazing. So that was definitely a very different kind of T-Rex song.
There's one more part of that song I just wanted to touch on and give my thoughts to, and that's the outro, where the vocals kind of fade out and it's really just the instrumentation. And I was enamored by the way that the guitar and drums were playing off each other. Like there's like these crazy guitar riffs going on, and sections where it's just the drum is hitting so fast and then cutting off completely. And I thought that was so cool. It was really a dynamic outro, and yeah, that, like, you know, the whole part of the song with the vocals was great, and then I found the outro just really elevated it and took it to that next level for me.
Oh no, it's yeah, it's a hell of a song. It's one of my favorite T-Rex songs. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great. Well, I'm very happy you liked it, and I think that's pretty much we're coming to an end of episode number 1.
Yeah, so to all the listeners, if you've enjoyed this, please be sure to rate our podcast on, you know, whichever platform you're listening to it on. Subscribe to it as well. That would be fantastic.
What's the Instagram page, Nick?
Yeah, so our Instagram page is at Just Hit Play Podcast. Definitely check that out. Be posting updates, news as to when episodes are coming out, things like that. So give that a follow if you haven't already.
And our Facebook page is Just Hit Play, an intergenerational sonic journey. Thanks to Angie for writing that. I could never come up with something that catchy. So thank you, Angie. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Angie.
And so one of the things that we want to do on this podcast as well is really showcase, if you're a new band and you want to, you know, let us play one of your songs, we'll try every episode to play a band that you may never have heard before at the end of our podcast. And today we have a song by the Bear Beats called "The Night." The Bear Beats are a local Brisbane band where I am. And I've got to know them over the last couple of years. I photographed them a few times. Darren and I photographed their concert a few weeks ago. And I really dig this band. So we're going to play their song to end the podcast. And I forgot to mention that the opening song was by a good friend of mine, Braden. We'll put his contact details at the beginning on the show notes. So Braden is a Canadian singer who also happens to live in Brisbane. I met up with him at a Canadians in Brisbane Facebook page outing, and he just happened to live down the street from me. And he's a really, really good guy and a really good musician. So thank you, Braden.
That's a very niche Facebook page.
Yes, it is. It's Canadians in Brisbane. No one else. No, you can't be American. You can't be Panamanian. It has to be Canadians in Brisbane.
Shout out Canadians in Brisbane. If you're a Canadian in Brisbane, please go like that page. I'm sure they could use it.
Or if you're a Canadian in Brisbane and you didn't know there was a Canadians in Brisbane Facebook page, come out. We drink beer and we talk about hockey, and every once in a while someone will bring poutine. It's pretty.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah. So thanks, Braden, for the loan of your song. You're a good guy, and I like the music. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed going down this musical journey with you.
Yeah, more to come as well. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to stay tuned to our social media pages for updates. And yeah, we hope to see you next time.
And this is the Bear Beats with their song called "The Night."
Creature of the night, creature of the night, creature of the night. Ladies looking fly, people wanna fly, people flying high. Don't you want to know where the people go? We will take it slow. Want to walk the dog, about to embark, let's make a trademark. Dark wishes, pleasure in your kisses, dark wishes, pleasure in these riches. You're picking up what I'm putting down. Don't wanna turn around, don't wanna turn around. You're not allowed to make a sound. Get here closer now. Welcome to the monster of the night, monster of the night, monster of the night. Boys wanna try, people wanna try, people be trying to take a bite. Dark wishes, pleasure in these places, dark wishes, pleasure doing business. You're picking up what I'm putting down. Don't wanna turn around, don't wanna turn around. You're not allowed to make a sound. Get here closer now. la 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 la